what is all of this? Like, really, truly, what's the meaning behind this? Who are human beings? Why are we on this planet? What is the point? And time again, I was just met with blank stares and disappointing answers.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. As you may know, I've recently relocated to Fiji from Melbourne, Australia. I've picked up my laptop, mics, lights, and any other equipment that I need, and I've been able to successfully work remotely, both in running my businesses and engaging with new opportunities. Having the option to literally work from paradise here in Fiji has been amazing. So I thought I'd give a shout out to a company that's helping thousands of people around the world do the same thing every day. CareersSaaS.com, which is short for careersasaservice.com, has the largest number of remote jobs and internships online right now, and all of them are direct from the companies. The way the world is moving right now, it's given many more of us the option to work remotely, and it turns out there are millions of jobs available to us globally that fit into a more flexible lifestyle and work-life balance. I've been looking through the careersaas.com platform, which recently launched, to add some extra interesting remote roles that would fit around my schedule. And I must say, it has so many roles across every industry and is the largest completely free remote jobs platform anywhere. What I find really interesting about careersaas.com is that after you sign up, which takes about 2 minutes, the AI gets to work and it makes a really easy, personalized experience, like being your own recruiter. So now I'm getting sent really relevant opportunities straight into my inbox. So if you're looking for a new work lifestyle where you can manage your work at your own pace, have the freedom and flexibility to work from wherever you like, jump onto their portal and app, careersaas.com, and explore. They currently have 1.7 million live roles listed on the platform, so you can start finding that dream job immediately. This episode is bound to have you on the edge of your seat. My guest today is Elizabeth April, and she is a psychic and cosmic channeler making serious waves around the world with her frighteningly accurate predictions about humanity and the collective, and her claims of an alien abduction experience that changed the way she saw the human experience. As a young girl, Elizabeth endured anxiety and depression and constantly found herself questioning the purpose of life. And then key moments in her life, including her first past life regression and the conscious alien abduction, reignited her spiritual and psychic abilities, and she says awoke her to a new state of consciousness. Her mission is to help increase the planet's vibration by spreading truth, knowledge, and awakening. Now, I urge you to just keep an open mind while listening to this episode and just take or leave what Elizabeth has to share. She has a massive global community now following her, so you just can't help but sit up and listen to what she has to say. I would absolutely love to hear what you thought about this episode, so please get in touch with me after you listen via Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear or on my personal page, Maritza_Barone. And just let me know what your thoughts were. I know it can be a lot to take in, hearing about alien abductions and galactic federations and senses beyond what we've been taught, but it is really fascinating stuff. So let us know what you think. I can't wait to hear from you. If you do have time, please give us a rating and review on iTunes so other people can find and listen to the show. Now let's jump into the chat with Elizabeth April. So I mentioned you, Elizabeth, on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, mainly about the 2020 and 2021 predictions that you had talked about, which we can talk about later in this podcast. And my listeners wanted to know more. They were actually really intrigued. So I'm grateful to have you here and for all of us listening to share your story and your ideas with us. So
Mhm.
welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, very, very exciting times I think we're in.
Very interesting times, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, this may be one of the first times that many of our listeners have heard from you directly, and even heard you speak. And I feel like we may need to ease a lot of our listeners into this conversation, because sometimes what you say can be a lot. It's new. You're pushing against the grain, which I absolutely love. But it's a lot to take in sometimes. So I really want to go back to the beginning. Firstly, tell us, who is Elizabeth April and what mission are you on right now?
Yeah, so I was born with extrasensory abilities, which basically means that at a young age, I was able to see auras and chakras and energies and ghosts and spirits. I was also very connected to past lifetimes, even though I didn't call it my past lifetimes. I was definitely the weird kid in school, and it was definitely difficult to make friends and fit in and just be normal, right? I think it's kind of difficult to be normal and fit in nowadays too. Um, so around the age of 10, I shut off all of my psychic gifts and spiritual abilities. I also feel like a lot of children are very psychic and very tuned in and doing a lot of the things that I was doing back then. So between the age of 10 and about 16, I was just kind of fitting in, conforming. I played a lot of sports. All of a sudden, I had friends and I was doing well in school and, all these things that society tells you that you need to have as a kid or as a teenager, I had. And life should have been great. Life should have been peachy and there should have been like a lot of happiness there. But there wasn't. I started to really sink into a deep depression. I battled with a lot of anxiety. A lot of the things that I was experiencing, I now know as like OCD, obsessive compulsive kind of behaviors. And that led me to really questioning. At 16, I was just really pushing against what the narrative was, what the norm was. I would go to my friends in high school or ask my teachers or go to the counselor and say, what is all of this? Like, really, truly, what's the meaning behind this? Who are human beings? Why are we on this planet? What is the point? And time again, I was just met with blank stares and disappointing answers. And I felt like, I guess I just felt disappointed in general about what the information was that was out there. And I think mostly disappointed that no one else was questioning the way that I was. And everyone thought that it was weird that I had this questioning. And so, luckily for me, my dad, who was an engineer and who actually also brought us up into Catholicism, was also very open minded and spiritual. And he had practiced past life regression in his life. And so at 16, when I was really going through depression and questioning, he said, well, would you be open to regression, past life regression? I said, yeah, I'll try anything at this point. And so, in about an hour and a half, we went into 5 past lifetimes. And in every single one of those lives, I was in a position of giving back to humanity. Sometimes I was a healer or a philosopher or a channeler, but in every single life, I was able to gain access to information and to help humanity with that information. And so at 16, I realized that this is it. This is my purpose. This is my mission once again in this lifetime to do that. So I actually ended up taking my dad's past life regression book. And when I went away to university at 18, I started doing past life regression myself on the kids that I met in university. And that was really amazing. I found that it was difficult to get people into a trance like state. So at a certain point in time, I asked myself, what if I just put myself into the trance like state and channeled other people's past lifetimes? Is that possible? And turns out it was. I would just put myself into this deep, relaxating, relaxing state of consciousness. And I was able to astral travel and remote view and navigate through timelines and see past lifetimes for other people. And it was brilliant. All of my psychic and spirituality, spiritual abilities came back, and they came back tenfold. And so I was very open minded at that time. But it really, truly wasn't until the conscious abduction that I had at the age of 18 as well, when I went away to a 10-day Vipassana meditation, silent meditation retreat. And yeah, during that meditation retreat, it was on night 2 where I was abducted very consciously by interdimensional beings. Now, before that point, I didn't know, I didn't think that aliens really existed. I didn't think that they were here. I mean, why would they even be here if they did exist? Like, who are the humans? And after that abduction, I started having very vivid flashbacks and recalls to lifetimes where I was living as an alien off planet, on another planet, on a spaceship. I just couldn't simply deny, life out there in the universe. And so I started doing past life regression for people off this planet to see what else is possible, what else is going on. And since then, I've been interacting with an organization and group called the Galactic Federation, which is really just an organization of many different interdimensional beings who are together for unity consciousness. So they're all over the universe, and they're just here to make sure that everyone's getting along, basically. So yeah, so I really love exploring past lifetimes. I really love tapping into aliens and understanding what their role is, and who we are, and what the whole point of existing and living really truly is. So that's kind of like a short version of my story. And I'm 28 now, so it's been about 10 years of exploring and navigating and downloading and breaking through this reality.
Well, see, I told you it was going to be a lot, and I've got about a million questions off the back of that, which, and I've heard you talk about all of that before, and I've heard you on other podcasts, and I'm there, I'm like, but what about this? Ask her this. So this is my sort of opportunity, I suppose, to delve a bit deeper into the areas where I want to know more of. Firstly, I'm going to just go back to the past life regression, because I want to know why past life regression can be useful for us in this current lifetime, because I've done some regression myself. I've had a glimpse into past lives of my own, and met a couple of different therapists who run this, but I haven't been able to take that information from seeing what my other past lives were and bring it into this current reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I truly believe, from my channeling and exploration, that we are the accumulation of every single lifetime we've ever lived in this present moment. So maybe you have a fear, maybe you have a phobia, maybe you have some sort of weird attachment, maybe you have abandonment issues, but you can't actually pinpoint it to, a situation or a moment in this lifetime that happened. And that can be very, distressing. It can be very difficult to deal with these things. Like, why am I this way? And why can't I just get over this thing? And, why does this fear keep coming back? It doesn't make sense. When you start to take a look at where you've been before and who you've been before and what you've experienced before, you start to realize that a lot of those things that we can't understand or even explain in this lifetime are actually just connected to those past lifetimes. So every time I go into a past lifetime for a client, which I don't take anymore, by the way, is why is this happening to you, right? So like, why are we going back into this medieval era where you ended up getting your foot caught in a rock and then it had to get chopped off? Like, why? What's the lesson there? And why, out of all of your infinite number of past lifetimes, why did we have to go to that one in particular? And then I kind of make the connection between this life and that life. And a lot of the times, those lifetimes are very similar because we're learning the same lessons over again. And the only reason why we would ever learn a lesson again is because we probably didn't learn it the first time, right? So a lot of people, I'll give you an example. Just a couple months ago, I was traveling with my dad around America. We were doing all these like portal activations and grid work and all of these cool things. And on the trip, I had this really sharp pain in my right shoulder blade. It was just so sharp. It was so brutal, especially when you're driving 8 hours a day. And it wasn't until we arrived at this one location and I believe it was in South Dakota. And it was this location where a huge battle took place between basically the white men and the indigenous. And and I had a flashback when we arrived at the location that I was indeed one of these white men who was battling the indigenous. And at that time, in that lifetime, although I've had many, many, probably a lot more indigenous lifetimes that I have as a white man, I was a soldier in that position for a reason, because I viewed the indigenous as savages. I viewed them as, less intelligent people. And when we were battling, I actually laughed in my head in that lifetime to say, we have muskets, we have guns. Like, what do you have? You have sticks, you have bow and arrow. Okay, cool. Like, bring it on. And during that battle, I ended up getting shot in the back with one of these arrows. Same thing. I kind of laughed it off, like, oh, no big deal. You just shot me with your arrow. What kind of damage is that going to do? And it turns out the arrow was tipped with poison, and it ended up killing me within probably a 10-minute span. But that arrow hit me right in that shoulder blade, right in the middle of it, right in that back area. And the second that I went through that past lifetime and understood I was completely ignorant, I was very arrogant, and I wasn't compassionate at all in that lifetime to the indigenous. And I needed to learn that lesson. And so the second I went into that past lifetime and understood the lesson that I was learning, I completed that cycle, and the pain instantly went away in my back. That's just an example of something that happened recently to me, as far as why it's important we need to kind of go back there. And it really truly is for completion.
Is it about having that awareness? Like, how do you actually receive these messages? Are they visual clues that come in while you're consciously just living life as Elizabeth April?
Yeah, I mean, everyone channels and receives messages differently. For me, I have a lot of clairvoyance, which means it's all visual. So, I mean, it's even to the point where there'll be a loud sound in my apartment and I'll see what the color of that sound is, right? So, my third eye is very open in that way, sometimes to my own detriment. But yeah, I mean, when I started having flashbacks to interdimensional lifetimes, I would be walking down the hallway of my university going to class. And in that moment, I would have an intense flashback of me as an 8 foot tall gray being walking down the hallway of a spaceship, and so sometimes they're kind of intrusive. Most of the time these days, I don't walk around with my third eye open. I usually sit in meditation, ask the questions that I need to, or just allow whatever needs to come up in that moment. But yeah, for me, it's all very visual.
And is that your way of managing it? Because I can imagine that if you're just receiving these messages willy-nilly wherever you go, it can get overwhelming.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm so grateful, because when I was a kid, I was so open and seeing all of these things as they were back then. But because this has been a lifelong journey of navigating and opening and closing and discerning, I've been able to just close it, at will, open it at will. And that gives me complete control over the ability. So I never usually get thrown into a flashback or what have you when I don't want to. But when I was in university around 18 and I started to really work with those abilities, I would smile at a stranger on the street and get a flashback to a past lifetime where we interacted and engaged. So it used to be pretty full on. Nowadays, it's much more controlled and much more relaxed.
Well, I want to jump into this abduction that you talk about with aliens. On your website, you say this newfound knowledge that you received post abduction somehow reawakened my DNA. My psychic and clairvoyant channeling abilities came back in extremes. I started astral traveling and lucid dreaming, reading minds, and talking to interdimensional beings in my bedroom. This life for me would never be the same. So, when you say abduction, that frightens the bejesus out of many of us, I'm sure. Did it frighten the bejesus out of you? And visually, what did that look like, this whole abduction journey that you went on?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was extremely frightening. It was extremely fear-based. All of my encounters, let's call them, afterwards have all been so beautiful and so pleasant. I believe that it was so frightening, because I needed to have that experience in a fear-based way to understand the polarity within interdimensionals. If I only had positive experiences with them, then I wouldn't be super compassionate around the people who do have very negative experiences, right? So it's just, I knew that that was contracted for a reason. And also, the beings that took me were not very pleasant. They weren't very loving. All the beings I interact with now, every single interaction, I get this huge wave of unconditional love, like this huge surge of cosmic euphoria, you know? So it's very different. But back then, like I said, I was in a 10-day meditation retreat. It was night 2 where they abducted me. And I was actually sharing a room with someone, but there was a curtain in between us. And I woke up in the middle of the night. It was all very conscious, which is odd for an abduction experience. I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this head that was, over top of me. And I thought that it was, I was at a meditation retreat, but I thought that it was my boyfriend at the time. So I'm like, oh, Cody, is that you? And next thing I knew, I was being taken from my bed and uh, basically, brought into the hallway. So there was about 3 beings. They were all very tall, maybe around 7 or 8 feet tall, very white. Like their skin was so white that it was almost like transparent, like almost see-through. And they did have hair, but it was like they were like just kind of gross beings, but they're like, their hair was like white and like straggly. I didn't really get a close up of their face. Like I think they had smaller eyes. And so there's 3 of them. One was hanging on to I believe it was my left leg. One was on my right arm, and then the other was on my left arm. And that's when they kind of like pulled me from my bed and dragged me to the hall. And then I literally remember looking down and seeing my right leg just dangling there. And I don't know how I got transferred from the retreat center up to their ship. That's the only part that I don't remember. Like, I don't know if it was like teleportation. I don't remember being pulled upward. There was none of that. But the next thing I knew, I was sitting in this metal chair on board their ship. And there was about 6 or 7 of them, very tall, in front of me on this ship in this room. And then there was one of them to the right of me, and I kind of figured that he was like the doctor. And he was handling this machine that was also to the right of me. Now, at this point, like I thought originally that they like muted my vocal cords or something, because I swear, like I wanted to yell, I wanted to scream, but nothing was coming out. But now I think I realized that they more so paralyzed me, which is a scary experience to have when you just have zero control. And and so I was in this chair. Even though I was paralyzed, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, and there was no even like telepathy. It was just so much fear that was going on in my mind. But my eyes were wide open and I could see everything that was happening. And to the right of me, there was this like kind of what was it, like a square, like rectangle, 3D shaped metal box. And then coming out of the metal box was like this cylindrical type of thing. And as it got closer and closer to my face, which I couldn't move, it got smaller and smaller. And I realized in that moment that they were chipping me, or they were putting something in my ear, my right ear. I couldn't move, but they planted something there. And then just like that, just as fast as it happened, I was once again back in my bed. They put me back in my bed, and I was fully conscious. I started searching, alien abductions in the location. I couldn't find anything, but it was really a prime location for an abduction. Here I am at a silent meditation retreat, can't tell anyone about this experience, in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere. And there was also a military base like 5 miles away, which is a pretty good, indication that there would be some sort of alien activity there, So I think I think it wasn't just about me. I think it was like wrong place, wrong time, or the right place, right time, because that abduction experience opened me up to a whole world of what else is going on out there.
Whoa. Now, that is intensely frightening, I'm sure, for so many people, and even yourself, who's so open to these experiences and this channeling that you are so used to. But when you have shared this story, there's obviously many non-believers into what you're saying. How have you managed that?
Well, when I was 16, I remember writing a journal entry, and you know, to me there was two possibilities moving forward for me. One possibility is that the entire world is crazy and I'm actually onto something with my knowledge and questioning and deep diving. Or the more likely of the scenarios is I'm just batshit crazy and the rest of the world is really just, that's just what it is. You know, it would be, okay, so, you know, you go to school, you go into debt, you know, go into more school, you get a good job, you get a 9 to 5, settle down, and that's it. Like, that was the worst case scenario for me. Like, that was literal hell. And then when I had the past life regression, and I'm like, oh my God, time is an illusion, reincarnation is possible, that just opened the can of worms for me. So then I immediately shifted into, no, I'm onto something and the rest of the world is crazy. And from making that decision back then, um, you know, there's no one could call me anything to throw me off of the path of, I'm really onto something here. This is the truth. And I am so compassionate and I am in complete understanding of everyone who does not get it, who does not agree with me. Recently, I've been really sinking into the identity of, even though I don't really believe in identity, but the label, let's say, of being a free will activist. All I'm here to do is to help people open their minds. I'm not here to tell people what is right, what is wrong, what is the truth, what is not the truth. I'm just here to say, hey, these are my experiences. This is what I've channeled. Take it or leave it. It's always up to you, right? So yeah, I've been called everything you could ever possibly imagine. I've been called it. Everything in the book, I've been called it. And of course, there's going to be people who don't believe because they haven't experienced. And I can't judge them for not believing because they don't have the same experiences and interactions firsthand that I have. So there's nothing that I can do or say to convince those people. I just have to lovingly accept where they're at right now and understand that I was once there too.
I like that you really push that take it or leave it mentality. You know, it's such a nice way to come through this messaging rather than having it pushed on you. And,
Yeah.
you know, some things you say, I'm sure people would completely agree with. Other things you say, they may not. So take parts of it and leave the other parts. And that's
Yeah.
exactly, you know, that's the best message that you can put out there. But you have a strong community. Your community is over 300,000 people now. So there's
Yeah.
plenty of believers. That's for sure. And you're growing very quickly. Your messages are growing very quickly. I had numerous people say, you've got to listen to this girl. You've got to listen to this girl. You've got to listen to this girl. And I'm like, hey, I'm already listening to this girl. So it's quite interesting. But
Yeah.
my biggest wow moment when I was listening to you were the predictions for 2020 and then the predictions for 2021 for the collective. They were amazingly accurate. And that's what you can't deny. When you hear predictions from a year ago and the year that we have all faced with this pandemic and all of these changes that the collective is experiencing. Tell me about how you channeled these predictions for 2020. Can you share some of them for people who haven't heard the predictions for 2020 and when you shared them?
Yeah, well, it's really funny. When I did the predictions video for 2020, you know, I did it in January and I had so many people watching that video in August, October, you know, thinking that I just recently came out with the video saying, wow, this is really spot on, thinking that I put it out halfway through 2020. When as a matter of fact, I put it out long before COVID was ever a thing, long before the pandemic, long before any of that. And so people were pretty amazed. So 2020 was all about like World War III, right? We are in a spiritual warfare. Things are going to ramp up. Polarity is going to be intense, you know. And so when I tap into the collective, it is extremely difficult to predict anything. So if I were to predict your future as an individual, it's much easier because you're in a container. There's only so many possibilities that I can look at within your own future. And what I typically do, or what I used to do with clients, is I would take a look at their future and say, well, this is one of the most probable outcomes, and this is the other most probable outcome. And it really depends on this one decision that you make: moving to Fiji, not moving to Fiji, taking this job, not taking this job, right? And I can basically see, it's really cool. I can see how the timeline unfolds based on the decision that a person makes. So for example, if I were to choose coffee in my mug versus tea versus hot chocolate versus whatever in my mug, I can see how my reality unfolds after making that choice. Of course, it doesn't really unfold too differently based on the choice of hot drink that I choose in the morning. But when we take a look at the collective, and we're taking a look at the collective unfolding, there are more than an infinite number of different potentials and possibilities. So I have to come at predictions in a way that is very all encompassing, right? So I always ask for the things that people need to know right now that are going to better their life, that are going to benefit them, right? And, years ago, there was a timeline that came through to me. And the timeline, let me just see if I can get it back. It was between 2016 and 2019 was a cycle where all of these light workers, all of these truth seekers, all of these star seeds were going to awaken, right? So between 2016 and 2019, if you had an ego death, if you changed your job, if you changed your living situation, if you changed your relationship, most likely you were having that ego death, that breakdown, in order to have that breakthrough, in order to realign to a higher vibration. The reason why light workers needed to go through that period between 2016 and 2019 is so that we could all be the leaders, standing in our power, standing in our conviction, to help the rest of the world through the period that we're in right now, which is another 4-year cycle between 2020 and 2024. This is the cycle of collective ego death, of collective collapse, where everything has to break down in order for us to basically step up and reform society as we know it, and step up into a new level of just a way of being, right? No longer are these systems feeding the 1%, they're feeding the collective, right? So, I made the prediction, I think back in 2018, that 2020 to 2024 was going to be this utter breakdown of all systems within society. I had no idea back then that it was going to break down in the way of a pandemic, but it makes sense. This is the fastest way that we can get the breakdown in order to reform, right? We can't bring in solutions like free energy technology while we're still utilizing coal and oil and all these things, right? So we're in this shifting period. And I said the same thing about 2021. When I took a look at 2021, the number one two words that came through was exposure and corruption. That's what we're moving into. 2021 is all about exposing the corruption. I was taking a look at the Vatican and religion, and a huge downfall within the Vatican, religion, or the Pope, something along there, which is crazy because that's already starting to happen. I was taking a look at protests and riots and unrest within society. That's already starting to happen, right? So it's like, things will continue to crumble for 2021. I didn't have too much positive news, but I was also talking about those of us who have done the work, those of us who have moved into a higher frequency, those of us who have removed themselves from the matrix in this way, will be manifesting that much faster, will be stepping into their psychic and spiritual abilities that much faster, and that sensitivity is going to be coming back to us. So it's going to be a year of polarity, but we're still going to see that collapse. Just because we've left 2020 doesn't mean things are necessarily going to get a lot better collectively. They still have to collapse, and they're still going to collapse all the way till 2024. And then hopefully at that time, we can really bring in the new solutions and build up a new society to better help the people.
What would your advice be for people to bridge the gap between now and 2024 in order to remain positive and truly survive in the best way?
Yeah, I would recommend completely separate yourself from the matrix as we know it. It is so disharmonic. It is so convoluted. It is so overwhelming right now. The polarity is so intense. Remove yourself from being on a side. Remove yourself from politics, remove yourself from any sort of doctrination or dogma or religion or belief system. Even remove yourself from the identities that you're hanging on to. Maybe you're hanging on to the identity of, well, I'm a really good mother because, or I'm a really great husband because, or, I love myself because I can be the provider and protector of the family. Any identity that you're attaching yourself to is going to be taken away from you if you hold on to that attachment. We need to be in fluidity at this time. We need to question everything. We need to be in the present moment and, tap into our own human. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you feeling today? What do you need today? You're hungry? What do you think best serves your body? What are you feeling you want to eat today, right? So it's like really checking in. Getting away from autopilot programming is going to really help you be in a place where anything is possible. Therefore, miracles and manifestations are very easily coming to you.
Listen to yourself more, pretty much, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
You talk about 3D and 5D mindsets. Can you delve into that a little bit deeper for us and explain it further?
As far as the mindset and the perception, within 3D and 5D, 3D is just very limited. It's, part of 3D is just not being aware at all. This, in 3D, it's like this reality is what it is, right? This desk is what it is, this day is what it is, making money is what it is. And you just kind of accept everything in your life at face value. And most of the time, without even knowing it, you put yourself into this victim mentality, which is life is happening to me. Right? That's very 3D. It's like, I've got no power here, right? The government is choosing this and my boss is promoting me or not promoting me. Life is happening to me. It's just very linear. It's very kind of dense. It's very stuck. And that's it. And so moving
Which
into
is probably the majority of people think that way.
Definitely the majority. And it's starting to shift because we were all forced to remove the identities that we attached to in 2020, right? It stripped away everything that we ever thought we knew, which is beautiful. Those of us who have already stripped that away, we're in a great place for 2020. Pretty much every single one of my friends said 2020 was the best year I've ever had, which is incredible to see, right? And to be aware of that. And so I also noticed too, a lot of people who are stuck in 3D, the thing that they go back to is, I just want things to go back to normal, right? And newsflash, there is no normal. Okay, we're never going back there. And I never want to go back there. That was a place of corruption and deceit and lies and projection and just so much stuff. So moving into a higher frequency. If we talk about 3D, third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth, any and all of the dimensions in this universe, all a dimension is a density of vibration. Okay. So as we move higher into the dimensions, the vibration becomes less dense, more fluid, and less tangible as well, less physical. So I'll give you a good example. So when you are asking for a new job, when you're in the third dimension and you're asking for a new job, you have to go through all of these linear steps to get that new job. I've got to, rewrite my resume, and then I've got to find the job that I want to apply for. And then I'm applying for the job with my resume. And then I'm waiting to hear back about the job that I'm applying for. It's like, it's a lot of work. That's a lot of time, a lot of energy, and also a lot of giving your power away to, well, it's up to the person to hire me and it's up to me to find, and all of that. And so moving into 5D and this less dense energy and vibration, if you want a new job, and I don't want to say that it's just this easy and bypass the work that we all have to do to strip away the layers and dig deep, but let's just say if you've done the work, all right, if you want a new job in 5D, you ask for what you want. I want a job that brings me joy every day, freedom in my bank account. Cool. That could be any job. So if you ask for what you want, you focus on it, you intend it, you don't even need to put your resume out there. And then all of a sudden, your uncle, who you haven't talked to in 3 years, is like, hey, so I know you do this thing in graphic design, and my boss is really looking for a new graphic designer, and the pay is really good. Like, would you consider this? Boom, there it is, right? Things happen at a quantum simultaneous level as long as you're aligned to that vibration. So when we move into higher dimensions, the physical is way less important, and the vibration that you're emitting through your thoughts, feelings, reactions, emotions, and actions are all associated. And that is what is going to bring things into your reality. And we need to really embody the fact that we create our own reality through our conscious intention. And through that creation, you got to take responsibility for everything. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm a millionaire, I created this. That's easy. But when you're suffering, it's very difficult to admit, I created this. So how do I uncreate this? How do I recreate this? And that to me is empowering. In some of my lowest moments in this lifetime, when I realized that I created that moment, I asked myself, if I created this terribly shitty situation, how do I uncreate and recreate it? And I managed to do that through deep diving and understanding the emphasis that was put on manifestation and creation within vibration and intention.
I think 5D thinking and 5D mindset is what's actually going to get us through this period that we're all facing right now, and the consistent changes that are yet to happen. When you talked about earlier going back to normal, I had this conversation just yesterday with my family, and one of them said, I can't wait for things to just go back to normal at work in particular. And I was like, there is no back to that. There is no normal. Life has significantly changed for all of us in one way or another. And in that 2016 to 20 period, 2019, I definitely kept saying there's this shift. I feel a shift happening. Yeah. And I said it through all my podcast interviews to all the people that I was talking to. What is this feeling of change coming? I couldn't understand what it was. And again, like I didn't predict a pandemic. I never actually thought I would live through a pandemic. I don't think any of us did. But there was definitely that feeling of change and shift for the better. So I feel like we are riding a wave at the moment that we just need to get through. We will survive. We just need to keep our vibrations high, our positivity there, and maybe just our awareness open to not just take on everything that we're being told. And this is pretty much exactly what you're ranting about every single day.
Exactly. Yep. Every day, just on the grind, just ranting about, the reality of what's happening. And I just want to make another statement, which is, so many people think that things have gotten worse, say in politics or in the economy or what have you, and things haven't gotten worse. We're just seeing it for what it is. Right? The truth is just being exposed right now. So everyone's like, oh my goodness, it's so bad, or the cabal, or this New World Order agenda, or all these things, especially for those who have been questioning and opening. And those things have always been there. I've been tracking the agendas, let's call them, within this reality for 10 years now, and they've been going on since the dawning of humanity. So it's brilliant that things are actually getting exposed and breaking down at this time, because the system was never set up to help the collective, never. And now it finally can be.
There's so much to think about, and for each of us individually, how we can use this time to make our lives better in some way, and really, shift from what wasn't serving us. And I love how you've just given examples that are day to day and easy for us to understand. You've got, like I mentioned before, quite a huge and growing community. What is your community like?
I would define them as star seeds. And what I would define as a star seed is a soul that is not originally from this planet. So I had a whole video on star seeds, a couple months ago, kind of defining, and once again, I try and stay away from polarization. So it's even difficult for me to kind of define, but we also all need something for our minds to wrap our, heads around. And so a human soul versus a starseed soul. So a human soul is a soul that signed up to come to this planet, to be here as a human being, to just live a 3D life. This is a third dimension planet. You know, they signed up to be here in a 3D way. All of the starseed souls are souls that came from other dimensions, other lifetimes off this planet, spaceships, other planets, what have you. And they consciously chose to volunteer their soul to be here on this planet at this time to create change. So star seeds are souls that are off this planet, coming from off this planet, volunteering to be here to create change. And so I would say my community is full of star seeds, full of people who have questioned their whole life. What am I really doing here? Why don't I really feel like I fit in? Why don't I feel like everyone else? You know, what is the meaning behind all the questions that I was asking? I think all of my community has asked because it led them to my content. And I think it's really beautiful listening and hearing some people's stories about just waking up out of the autopilot and instantly finding my content. And for me, it's like, wow, like you are clearly a starseed. You're clearly way more advanced than, I don't know, the average individual, because it's a huge leap to just be like, I wonder if this is all that there is to aliens and quantum physics and third eye awakening and all the stuff I go into. So that's really impressive, the leaps and bounds that people are making. And yeah, and honestly, the video that blew up, which was in 2020, was my Galactic Federation Message to Humanity video. I've been communicating with the Galactic Federation since 2011, you know, and I mean, it was nothing new for me, but the second that I put that video out there, all of these star seeds basically found it. And that's how I kind of garnered that kind of attention just in this past year. But I've been grinding away on socials since 2016. And, you know, I've just gotten the individuals, the diamonds in the rough per se. And now 2020 is a great example of humanity really waking up and questioning beyond autopilot, because they are finding content like mine, which is really like above and beyond Buddhism, above and beyond law of attraction, above and beyond kind of the basic bitch spirituality stuff that's out there, you know, and it's impressive, I think.
When you talk about the Galactic Federation, if you were to see that on a screenshot, are they the top of the food chain?
That's a great question, and I do rant about this as well. You know, it's not just about being human. It's not just about the cabal and the shadow government's agenda. It's not just about aliens and the Galactic Federation. It's not about any of that. Those are all still limitations. Those are all still stuck within some sort of paradigm. The above everything, the all that is source frequency. That would be God. That would be, but it's undefinable. And I believe that way back in the day when, you know, humans were getting visitations by God, right? Quote unquote God. I believe that it was an interdimensional being, probably either jumping into a body or having a human body like Jesus. I believe he was an ascended master, interdimensional, just a higher consciousness soul. You know, and we perceive these almighty powers as gods. Same thing with all of the gods in Greek mythology. I believe we're just interdimensionals. In, you know, the pharaohs in ancient Egypt, I believe we're all just interdimensional beings. So no, I don't think that they're God at all. I think that there is a source that we are all connected to above and beyond any sort of limitation or even incarnated body.
Mm. And so is, in your opinion, the Galactic Federation here to help us?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they are an organization that are definitely here to help us ascend and expand and raise our consciousness vibration, and help the collective. But they're also here to basically put on trial the individuals who have done crimes against humanity, you know, and so they're kind of here to reprimand the beings who have taken advantage of us and, you know, done some not so great things. And so they're kind of like, I hate to say it because, you know, but it is kind of what it is. It's like they are the government and the police system of the universe, but they don't govern or police their own rules. And that's what makes them so open and free and high vibrational is they just govern the rules of the universe. And for example, one of the rules or the laws of the universe is the law of non-intervention, which states that any being cannot override another being's free will. And there are many beings out there in the universe who want to override other beings' free will for their own gain and what have you. And so that's when the Galactic Federation will step in and basically reprimand those beings, or jail them, I guess, in a sense, for not abiding by the laws of the universe.
Now, you've been questioning this since you're a kid. What would you say is the purpose of the human experience?
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of any incarnated experience in the entire universe is the same as the purpose of the human experience. So if you imagine like the tree outside your window or the cat roaming around your countertops or what have you, we all have the same purpose. To sum it up, I would say there are 12 dimensions in this universe. And within each dimension, we are able to incarnate within different limitations, right? Every dimension has different limitations based on the vibrational density. So if you say, for example, there are 1,000 1,000 lessons that we can learn per dimension, and I'm just throwing that number out there. So you can incarnate 1,000 times in the third dimension to learn all of the lessons there are to learn based on the limitations in the third dimension. And then once you graduate from 3D, you move on, 4D, 5D, whatever. It doesn't really work as linearly as that, but just for the sake of ease, let's say it's linear. And then when you get to the 12th dimension and you've learned all of the lessons that there is to learn in all of the dimensions and incarnations and limitations in this universe, there's a choice to make. Do you want to go back to source, which is everything and nothingness, all light, all dark simultaneously? Or do you want to become your own source and create your own universe? So really, if you just take a look at, so the only reason why we're experiencing limitation, polarity, suffering, existence as it is in this moment is just to learn and grow and move forward. The whole point of everything is just to be. There is no real finish line. And we're just in it. We're in the experience. And once you really embody that and understand that, there is this absolute surrendering that takes place in your system of not needing any more than you currently have and fully accepting the limitation, challenges, and suffering that you've experienced in your own life so that you can move forward with just being in the present moment.
It's so interesting that we're never taught this. And even with senses, we're taught we have 5 senses, 5 simple, believable senses. And I feel as though now people are opening up to really exploring so much more of what is out there in this, I can't even call it world anymore, this universe, this galaxy after this conversation. It's just so much bigger than what we've all been taught to believe. If you had one final message to share to all of humanity, if you had the whole world listening today, what would it be?
It would be that we are the only thing creating our current reality. Now, of course, we are collectively co-creating the reality for all of us together. But it's important that we understand that we are so powerful and that everything that we think emits a vibrational frequency that comes back to us in one way or another. We are the true creators of this reality. So start to take a look at your reality. Ask yourself, what do I love about my current life? What do I not love about my current life? And it's less about what you need to do to change the things that you don't love. And it's more about what vibration do you hold within the things that you don't love, right? If you don't love your job, what is the most ideal job? Not what is it, but what is the vibration of it? It's freedom. That's the vibration of it, right? So to really get away from the what, when, where, how, and just to really embody the vibration of the existence that we want to be in from moment to moment, and to take our power back from the institution, to take our power back from our family, to take our power back even from our partner and say, how am I creating this reality and how can I create it to be in better alignment with my higher self? And that is definitely the number one message that everyone needs to know, and essentially taking that responsibility back from moment to moment.
You're a fascinating being. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.